The Dark Knight. This movie is phenomenal. Heath Ledger was fantastic in this film. He just was. Don't even try to fight me on this, you guys. From the moment he was cast, actually, I heard people saying that there was a big uproar and that they thought he was a terrible choice. To be honest, I never felt that way. I always felt like he was going to be fine. And I didn't really have a ton of exposure to him from before. I mean, gosh, honestly, I don't even remember what I may have seen him in before this. Honestly, did I say that twice? Honestly. I don't know if I did see him in anything before The Dark Knight, but I knew of him and I had seen clips of him. That's going to bug me now, whether I saw him in stuff before or not. I mean, I knew who he was. It was not any sort of mystery. But anyway, whatever. I got good vibes from him as the choice. And I saw this movie, I think, 3 times in the theater. It was so good. His acting was amazing. He actually outdid Christian Bale, and I liked Christian Bale. I feel like Christian was a wonderful pick for Batman. I really enjoyed Batman Begins. Dark Knight comes out, and it was so good. Just very well written, very well acted. The music, the score was just kept you, during certain moments. I think Hans Zimmer did it. He also did the score for Batman vs. Superman. And I didn't realize that right away until I'm watching Batman vs. Superman, maybe the extended cut. And the soundtrack is like this constant stuff in the background, and it's kind of building tension in you and you don't even know it, but it's building up. I'm like, you know what? That reminds me of the music in The Dark Knight. That slow building of just the background, and it just builds and builds, and it's subtle at first. And I looked it up. Yeah, same guy. Anyway, whatever. The whole thing is really good. If you have not seen it yet, shame on you. But the premise is, obviously, it's Batman and Joker. Joker shows up, he causes mayhem, chaos, whatever. But you've got to watch this for Heath Ledger's performance alone. Phenomenal job, you guys. Go check it out if you haven't. So, okay, moving on to number 4.
Michael and Sam have just moved to Santa Carla, California.
Say hello to the night, lost in the shadows. Okay, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to just talk. The Lost Boys. My absolute favorite vampire movie of all time, period. Nothing has ever beaten it, not even Underworld, but they're 2 completely separate feels, okay? They're just different. Lost Boys, I have loved this movie ever since I saw it. I developed a huge crush on Kiefer Sutherland when I saw it. And it's just, I remember hearing about this when I was in high school. My best friend went to go see it in the theater, and she came the next day and she was telling me in history class, she was telling me about these different scenes and how good it was. And I remember her specifically talking about the scene where they were hanging underneath the railroad tracks and then they fell down and I was like, wow, that sounds really good. That sounds really good. And I watched it and I was so hooked by this thing. It's super 80s stuff, you guys. Flashy clothes, big hair, and but it's so nostalgic and it's so well done. The story is so fun and funny. It's a lot of comedy in here. It's considered a horror, obviously, but is it really? I mean, is it really? It's not really a horror. Yeah, there's vampires and they're killing people, but it's not a horror movie, y'all. It's like a fun ride. There's nothing scary about it at all. Not to me, anyway. I think most people probably is not scary unless you're a little child, in which case you really shouldn't be watching things like that when you're very little. Whatever. Anyway, the premise of the story is this newly divorced mother and her 2 teenage sons, they moved to Santa Carla. Yeah, Santa Carla. I always get it mixed up with Claire. Santa Carla, which is a fake town in California. They moved there, and they eventually find out that there are some strange things going on there. People going missing. Vampires are a thing, and maggots and worms are also a thing. And if you haven't seen it, you have no idea what I'm talking about when I say that. You need to get on this. Like, now. Just turn this video off if you've made it this far through my rambling and just go watch it. It's a lot of fun, you guys. A lot of fun. Moving on to number 3.
Most of the intelligence community doesn't believe he exists. The ones that do call him the Winter Soldier. He's a ghost. You'll never find him.
Captain America, the Winter Soldier. Okay, you guys, this is my favorite MCU film of all time. Nothing has been able to beat it, not even Infinity War, not even Civil War, not even Endgame. I enjoyed all those movies. I've enjoyed most Marvel movies, with the exception of one, which I absolutely despise, and that's Captain Marvel. Thor, the second Thor, is pretty close to that, but I'd rather watch that 50 times over before I watch Captain Marvel ever again. I hate Captain Marvel so much, I'm not even going to add it to my DVD collection. Anyway, The Winter Soldier, such a fun film, and I honestly don't know if it's because, oops, sorry, I had to turn my fan on because my computer's getting really hot. I feel like I'm going to need to pause this recording in a bit. Sorry about that. Anyway, what I was saying is, I don't know if my absolute love of this movie is because the first Captain America was a disappointment. I didn't despise it, but I was not as blown away by it as I was hoping that I would be. So it was disappointing. And then the second one came out, and I saw the trailers, and they looked interesting, but you know, I didn't really hold out a huge amount of hope. I just went to see it, and I was blown away. The storytelling was really good. I loved the conflict between the Winter Soldier and Captain America. When I went in to see the movie, by then I did know who Winter Soldier was. But before I saw it, when I was watching a trailer with my brother, he told me who the Winter Soldier was supposed to be. And he said, I've mentioned this before, I'm pretty sure. He said that, oh, everybody knew who this character was. Well, I'm like, I did not know because I never read those comics. I didn't even know who the Winter Soldier. I'd never even heard of the Winter Soldier. So anyway, go to watch the Winter Soldier, and it was so much fun. I think I only saw it once in theaters, but I have seen it multiple times since then. It is so good. The acting is very well done. It really felt to me like Chris Evans just really fit. He filled this role so much better to me than he did in the first one. Like it felt more natural. It felt like he had settled in to his part as Captain America, and he had more depth to him. I just connected with him a lot better in this second movie. And then of course the story of the Winter Soldier and the enigma that he was, and how dangerous he was, and this conflict that they had with each other, and then Steve finding out who he was, and then the climax at the end. And one of my favorite chase scenes in almost any movie that I've seen, I mean, I don't know, I guess it's just because it stuck with me so much, because I was getting really into this by the time this chase scene happened. And that was the scene with Nick Fury when the people were coming after him. When you first see the Winter Soldier, basically, the scene where he's kind of like barricaded by these cars, and he's, his vehicle that he's in is having some technical issues. And, it's just, things are just really, the tension is really, really, really it's just ramping up. And then here comes the Winter Soldier, and his intro was just phenomenal. It was so much fun. All of the chase and action scenes in here were really good. At the time, I wasn't crazy about Black Widow, because I didn't really like Scarlett Johansson very much at all. She has grown on me now that her character's dead. But anyway, whatever. It took her death for her to grow on me. But now that she's grown on me, I appreciate her character even more as I watch it. And I don't think any MCU film will surpass this for me as my favorite MCU film of all time. I just can't see that happening. I think the MCU's best days are behind it. So really, I don't think there's any chance of any film overtaking this one for me. And so because I enjoyed it so much, it made my top 10. Okay, moving on to number 2. Wonder Woman. I love Wonder Woman, you guys. This movie had such an impact on me. I think mostly because I was so afraid they were going to screw it up. Wonder Woman was my childhood hero. As I've said before, yes, I was the kid that went outside and twirled around and removed their clothes and had Wonder Woman outfit underneath. That was me. I loved her. I read her read her comics a lot when I was a kid. I think that was I read X-Men and Spider-Man and Batman and Spider-Woman and Dazzler and but Wonder Woman was always one of my favorites. So I really liked the show that was on, with Linda Carter in the 70s. And then finally they got around to making a live action version. And when they announced Gal Gadot was going to be Wonder Woman, I was not impressed at all. I've mentioned this before in another video. Was not impressed at all. I was as down on her as you could be. And then she showed up in Batman vs. Superman. She showed up as Diana Prince. I'm like, okay, she's looking okay as Diana Prince, but that's different. She wasn't in her full-on outfit yet. And then when she showed up at the end, holy cow, I was like a little child inside screaming with excitement. I was so, so happy that she really pulled it off. And then I was really excited for the movie. The movie comes out. I saw one trailer and then I was like, no more, don't want to see any more because I don't want to know anything about it. I don't want to know what the synopsis is. I don't want to know what reviews are. I don't want to see a trailer. I don't want to hear nothing. Don't want to know nothing about nothing. Well, by the time I did get around to seeing it, which was like the weekend that it came, premiered, I did already know by then, by accident, that it had a very high Rotten Tomatoes score, which made me pretty excited because at the time I had a little bit more faith in Rotten Tomatoes than I do now. Anyway, whatever. Went to go see it the Saturday that it opened. Oh, I will never forget that. That was that was one of the most fun experiences I have had in a movie ever. I will always have very fond memories of this film and how it made me feel. And she did such a good job. And the soundtrack was so good and the action was so good. And there was so much excitement. It was so well received. And I was so happy. And I was also happy that it did not get overridden with a man-hating sort of feminist type of agenda, which I was really, really afraid was going to happen because these things have been building for a while. That's a whole other subject for a whole other video, but I don't think I'll do that because I'm not going to get into that sort of stuff too much. That's not really what's going to be the primary focus of my channel, but it's going to come in from time to time. And yes, I was very concerned that was going to happen, and it did not. And I was so happy that it did not. I was like, oh my gosh, not only did they not ruin it and make it crappy with the way it was acted in the story, but they also didn't bring, divisiveness into the story. They didn't make it about that. They just made it about her experience and the things she learned, her disappointments in mankind, not men, mankind, humans, because of how flawed we are. And she goes out there, to help the world and to help people. And she had this very idealistic image of the way things were. And then when she found out that, no, we're just flawed people. It's not because, things are put in our heads. We're just by nature, we're very flawed and we do some very bad things. And she had hard lessons to learn. And anyway, it was so well done. The battle at the end, I really, really enjoyed it. Quite emotional. A couple of scenes for me at the end that still grabbed me, and I've seen this movie so many times I've lost count. I dragged everybody to see this. I dragged, my son went with me and my family, my cousins, and we all went together to see it. And I loved it so much. I talked my daughter into going to see it. And then I dragged my parents to go see it. And then I ended up taking my husband to go see it. I mean, I think that was the film that I had seen the most in theaters 4 times. Up until Halloween 2018, which I saw 4.5 times in the theater. So anyway, whatever. Such a great film. If you guys haven't seen it yet, I find that really hard to believe, like so many of these other movies. If you haven't seen it yet, do yourself a favor and go watch this film. It is very well done. Okay, moving on to numero uno.
taken at the West Highland Police Station, 1984. You were there.
Same model.
These were taken today.
You have to let me see my son. He's in great danger.
Terminator 2 Judgment Day. If anybody knows me, they know this is my all-time favorite movie. Nothing has ever beaten it. As much as I love Wonder Woman and all the other films on this list, nothing has ever beaten Terminator 2 for me, and I really don't think that anything will ever beat Terminator 2 for me. From the moment this movie came out, I was blown away by it. I could not get it out of my head. I loved everything about this film. And of course, after I saw it many, many times, I started to spot little flaws in it, like little blooper, goofs and stuff like that. It wasn't really enough to take away my enjoyment of the film. But a few years ago, they came out with a remastered or fixed up sort of version that we went to go see, that my kids and I went to go see in the theater. And they then had the digital ability to fix a lot of these little mistakes. And now it's the perfect film. It's perfect. Absolutely perfect. It's great. It's so good. They fixed the little issues with, when he's on the motorcycle and he jumps down off the wall. You can tell it's a stuntman. They put his face on there digitally. They did other things. Anyway, whatever. I absolutely love the Terminator. Love the Terminator. Then this came out and it was so good. And the way the story was constructed and the way the tension ebbed and flowed, or the action ebbed and flowed. It wasn't too much action. And then, it had the appropriate amount of action and then backing off. And kind of getting into the rhythm of the story, and then action and backing off, and then more story, to where finally they came to the conclusion, the final battle climax and everything. And it was really well done. Linda Hamilton blew me away. I was so amazed. I don't know what that was. Anyway, whatever. I was so amazed by her physical transformation, you guys. I wanted to be her. I wanted to have her muscles. I started incorporating more weight work. I mean, I already was exercising because Arnold Schwarzenegger was my, he was my inspiration to begin exercising as a teenager. Terminator 2 comes along and I see how absolutely cool and badass Linda Hamilton looked with those freaking arms. And I'm like, I want to look like that. Anyway, whatever. Her character undergoes not only a wonderful physical transformation, but the emotional and mental transformation that she had between the first and second movie. She's almost like a completely different character. This stress and burden that had been put on her and how it messes with her mind and it affects her emotions. And she is just not a happy person at all. And her son, John, they're kind of estranged because she's in a psych ward because society thinks she's crazy because she's doing stuff like trying to blow up computer factories. Well, it's because she knows what's coming in 1997, right? So anyway, the synopsis is that Arnold's Terminator, he comes back in time, this time to protect John Connor. At the time, it was not known whether he was going to be good or bad, but it was revealed maybe about, I don't know, a fourth of the way through the film, or a little bit less, that he was actually there. He was a good guy. Anyway, my favorite version of this is the one that includes a lot of the scenes that they took out of the theatrical version, which includes the part where they go into his head to take out the chip so they can flip the switch, and he can start to learn on his own and process things like with more of a human type of intelligence. I felt that was a huge mistake to take that out of the theatrical cut. I remember that portions of that particular scene were in the trailer, and I remember noticing that part wasn't there when I went to go see it in the theater. I saw it only one time in the theater when it first came out. I took off work to go watch this movie, you guys. I was like, ain't nothing stopping me from watching this movie. Anyway, yeah, took off work that day. And then I went to go see it again, like in 1997 when not 1997, 2017, when it came back into theaters for like some sort of anniversary-ish sort of thing. What? No, maybe not. Whatever. It was back in theaters for a little while. 3D or something. I could do without the 3D, but it was the only way I could see it. So I'm like, I'm going to see it. So anyway, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, the scenes that they cut out. I think it was a mistake to cut that scene out. I could see why they cut some of the others out, but that one to me really should have stayed. I guess James Camp, they put a lot of effort into that scene too, y'all. They brought her twin sister in and they were doing all this filming. I mean, it was just like, oh my goodness, what a waste, you know. But anyway, now when I watch it on Blu-ray or DVD, I always watch that version. When it's on TV, obviously they show the theatrical version and they don't have that. But, you know, Terminator 2 is one of those movies where if I'm flipping through my Pluto TV app or whatever, and it's playing, I always stop and watch it. It's just, there's nothing that's gonna, you know, make me change my mind. So yeah, it's been my favorite since I saw it. Nothing has been able to overtake it. I really don't foresee that there will be anything that will overtake this movie for me. So that is why it makes my top spot, my number one, will always be my number one. But I will tell you that right before this became my number one, it dethroned the movie that used to be my number one, which I will now list as number 1.5.
In the 21st century, a weapon will be invented like no other. This weapon will be powerful, versatile, and indestructible.
The Terminator, where it all began. I mean, it's so connected. See, this is why it's like, it's hard to separate these two. I mean, obviously T2, it's like some of these films I wanted to leave on my list. I was like, well, really, logically, the only way I can do it is to very closely attach certain numbers. So number one has an attachment, 1.5, which is The Terminator. I very clearly remember the first time I saw this movie was not in theaters. At the time, I was a teenager. I didn't really go to theaters too much as a kid. I had gotten out of school early that day because I had a migraine and I thought I was going blind and scared me to death. And my dad takes me he comes and gets me, takes me to the doctor. On our way home, we stopped at the gas station, which had a video store attached to the gas station. And I had seen The Terminator on the shelves before and finally rented it that day. We get home, I'm feeling sick to my stomach because of the migraine, which I didn't know that was part of it. That was my first migraine of about 2 or 3 that I've had in my lifetime. They are not fun, you guys. I'm feeling sick to my stomach. We get home. As soon as I walk in the house, I throw up. And then when that's all done, I go and watch The Terminator. And it had such an impact on me. I loved the way it was put together. I loved the action. The story was so good. The synopsis, if anybody doesn't know, which this is the most unbelievable, I just can't imagine that nobody knows what the synopsis of this is. This Terminator, a cyborg from the future, is sent back to kill Sarah Connor before she can give birth to John Connor, who is going to be the leader of the resistance that rises up to successfully fight against the machines that have basically taken over. They've infiltrated the Skynet. They're part of the defense grid and all that stuff. And they've determined that humanity is a threat. And so they collectively decide they're going to wipe humanity off the earth. They start a nuclear war. That, apocalypse starts and all this. And people start to rise up and fight against the machines. And then time travel became a thing, and so they sent Arnold's character back. This was his groundbreaking role. He had been in Conan before this. Conan had come out before this. I remember seeing commercials for Conan, and I remember thinking Arnold was just a strange-looking guy. I mean, I was a teenager at the time, very young teenager at the time. And I was like, oh, he's so funny looking, He had that gap between his teeth. He's big and muscular, very, stony face and everything. And then my parents, a few years after Conan, had seen Terminator. They'd gone to a motel or something and it had been playing. And they came back later and they told me all about it. And they're like, how good it is. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, And then while they're telling me about it, a commercial comes on showing a movie with Linda Hamilton in it called, shoot, I can't remember the name of that movie. It was a movie she was in with Tommy Lee Jones. It was showing a trailer for it. And they were like, that's that girl that played in that movie we were telling you about, you know. And I was like, oh, okay. And then a few years, or like maybe 1 or 2 years after that, is when I saw it for the first time. And I have watched the ever-loving out of this movie. I used to get up early in the morning before school to watch this movie. In addition to Conan the Destroyer, I would do that too, and Lost Boys. But this one was just like, I made an audio recording of this thing, and I would listen to it sometimes when I was at work. I mean, I was absolutely obsessed with this film, you guys. It was just so well done. It's perfect. No, it's almost perfect, because Terminator 2 is perfect. No, this movie is pretty well, it's pretty dang close to being perfect. I was very impressed with the whole thing. Obviously, if you can't tell, I mean, I've yammered on and on about these two movies, but I really love the way James Cameron brought this story to life. And it's funny that my favorite movie is a James Cameron film. And two of the movies that I hate the most out of all these movies I've seen are movies of his, Titanic and Avatar. And now he's making all these other Avatar movies. And I'm like, why? Just come back to the Terminator universe and make something better. I was super excited to see Dark Fate. And then when I saw it, I was super let down. And I remember I made a review for it, I think the very day I saw it. And I was much more kind in that review than I am now. Like the more time has gone by, the more I've had to think about it and what a wasted opportunity it was, the more angry I get at that movie, and how it basically I'm going to say words I shouldn't say, but basically it did such a disservice to the story and the characters and the fans, and it was absolutely disrespectful in my opinion. It might have been a fine action film, but it was a horrible Terminator film. And I hate to end this on a down note talking about sequels that are terrible, but I think of all the sequels that the one that has really grown on me the most has been Terminator Salvation. As far as I'm concerned, that's probably one of the better sequels. Terminator 3 was, it was just a repeat. After a while, the formula gets a little old, right? Even for films that you love. But Terminator Salvation took it and turned it in a different way, and I appreciated that. And it's definitely something that I have grown to appreciate more as time has gone by. So anyway, there's that, you guys. My top 10 films of all time. So far, these have just been pretty consistent in the top 10, or technically 12, but whatever. It's my list. I can formulate it however I want to. Anyway, that's just how I look at it, as I've already explained. So I have gone on and on, way too long about all this, but yeah, these are my favorites. It's kind of a strange collection. Obviously, as you can see, most of it is comprised of action stuff, horror stuff with regard to vampires and stuff like that. Not really horror, but whatever, with some different ones thrown in, like a couple of dramas, Black Stallion and a Warrior, and animated movie, Secret of Nim. So, yeah. Anyway, that's it. That's my list, you guys. What are your top 10 favorites? And I would say, do you agree or disagree with mine? But there's no such thing as complete agreement or disagreement when it comes to stuff like this, because it's all subjective, right? Everybody's top 10 list is different, and that's fine. But this is mine, and I wanted to share it because that's what my channel is about, talking about movies and stories and fun stuff like that. And I wanted to do something special for my 1-year anniversary. So, okay. Something dropped up there to scare the crap out of me. Whew. Okay. Anyway, it's past time for me to stop this recording. My computer is going to fry if I don't shut up. So, all right, you guys, that is it for now. Hasta luego.